Okay, so picking up where we left off, Mary, let's look at yours really quick here. So I think yours is working pretty well. I like a lot of stuff going on here. I think let's kind of address the two things that kind of are weird to me. And one is the whatever's going on with his eye here, and this may be the distortion in his glasses. And if so, I feel like maybe you need like something to kind of show that, because what it feels like is just his eyeball is it's like he's kind of got a swollen area underneath his eye. But I feel like it's probably supposed to be distortion in his glasses. I don't know how you could show that other than maybe get a little bit of the highlight in there somehow. The second thing I notice is I'm still just having a hard time with this mustache here, and the reason for that is okay, so we get there. The reason for that for me is not that there's the gap there. The reason for that is because it feels like it just flows right along this line. So it's like right along the cheek line, and so you're getting like a coincidental line. And so we talk about, I think we've talked about coincidental line in class, but that would be the equivalent of, like, let's say you have a picture of a ball standing next to a building, or there's a building in the background, and if that building in the background kind of has like this as the positioning of it in the background, then it feels like this ball is just kind of butting up against it, right? So a better way to compose that would be, a ball with the building in the background and getting enough overlap, or vice versa, where you push the, put a gap in between the two. And so you just see those kinds of coincidental lines, and it's just this coincidence that his cheek kind of oh, sorry. I get a text message. I was making sure it wasn't anything important. It's this coincidental line that kind of comes down from his cheek here, and it happens to just go right along the edge of where his mustache is. And so it feels like, to me, that we should be seeing it. Let me grab it feels like what we're seeing is really this, and that it's cutting off his mustache. I have to do that on a different layer, I guess. Does it make sense? It feels like his mustache is kind of just kind of hitting a wall because of that. How is that doing that? It has to. Anyway, so hopefully that makes sense. I think that's something you could. My answer for that would probably be to extend his mustache out a little further and have it come back in like this. And so, again, I don't know why it's not letting me draw on top of your stuff, but let's try it anyway one more time. New layer. Shouldn't be anything on that. And so now, if I think the mustache did a little bit more like this, then it's not as strong. So you kind of get that breaking of it. And so I think just pushing that just a little bit would really help clean up that issue. I noticed a couple other things I think could just help to kind of clean up a little bit of the lines. And so if I go in here and look, I've frozen everything now, so let's unfreeze everything. If I look at this object here, it's supposed to kind of be implying that it's going around the back of his body here, but where it comes to this rounded edge, it's not really reading as that very well. So I think just going in here and finding this point and making this a sharper change, like maybe not specifically that, but something a little bit more like that is going to make that feel like it's wrapping around a little bit more. And then I just think there's a couple areas where it kind of feels like you've got a lot of layers of blob brush here, but what we get is like this weird little hitch right there. Can you kind of see what I'm see if I can find something to draw with? It's not going to highlight everything as we get here, and then there's just a little bump there. And so I guess the way that you could deal with this, you've got some layer you've drawn on top of it, and then some layers that are I see. And so some of this may just be that you would have to go back in there with the bob brush again and just kind of ease that in. That was terrible, wasn't it? To kind of round that off. But I think if you can find the layers where those hitches are coming from, let me find another example of one. I'm not. Oh, well, that one's that. So we can kind of see that on. This is kind of hard to find what I'm looking for. There we go. So if we select that one to get that little bump out of there, you can use the smooth tool, and then we just kind of smooth that out, and we're probably just going to get a little bit of a smoother transition there. And so now you just kind of alleviated that. If we go look at I guess we could look at that. I'm not sure if that's going to be easy to clean up with this. Maybe this one. Everything is in multiple pieces, so I'm not 100% sure how that happened. I guess you probably did different parts of the lines at different times. I'm trying to find something inconsistent. But using the smoothing tool may be a good way to help you do that. Now, if you just have a whole bunch of stuff going on, like all these individual lines, what may be better to do is if you can grab, what is this? This is the pink lines, it says. That's, okay, eye lines, I'm sorry. Got pink background, black. Okay, yeah, so we can grab all of this black and see how kind of sketchy it is. I'll go to Object, Expand Appearance, and so now it's all shapes, right? And then under my Pathfinder, I can just group all that together. And so now we have all one shape that is making up all of this line. This will make it a little easier for us to clean up if you have some issues that, yeah, maybe here. This isn't really an example of something I clean up because it's in the hair. Maybe, how do I find all the brown lines? That's the ones I want. So it's like maybe under some of the different fixing stuff. Well, let's try it on the black. I guess this part wasn't something you probably wanted to keep, was it? Yeah, I think some of the messed up parts are just from the different layering. So I think you understand what I'm talking about now, though, with the smooth tool. So I think getting that cleaned up a little bit will allow you to be able to like clean up how that line is kind of jagged and just make that a little bit smoother. And the same. That's not bad there, but like even right in there, just really small things right here in the corner of the mouth. But I can do that, but it's not really going to show because of the way this is all kind of layered together. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Those are the main things that I'm seeing in this one. Let's go and move on. Patrick, this is your revision. I'm going to look real quick at the difference here between that. Yeah. I do think that's working a little bit better. Okay, so we open this up and look at So to me, there's a couple of little things you could do for cleanliness purposes. Like if we get in here close on this, which it doesn't say we have to get in there close on it. You have outlines around everything, and I'm not 100% sure that that's helping you. It may not be hurting it. But if we select this and just, let's say we don't have an outline around that. It looks like we have an outline around it. Maybe it's this we have an outline around. Oh, it's not an outline, it's an actual line. Okay, well that makes sense. So some of the issues you're getting is stuff like this. This little hitch right in there. And I think that's coming from the fact that those two aren't connected. So smoothing it isn't really going to help. In fact, it's making it a little bit worse. So I think that you need to go in and find a lot of those little pieces that are just like this. Like this is this is just an area that needs a little cleanup on it to make it. And so this shouldn't be too hard to get these as solid shapes. And if you already have them as solid shapes, then I don't know, you don't necessarily need this extra line going around it. Alright, so we get the solid shape. So like really what you can do is you can just add a stroke to that. Right? And now we get that line going around it. But the line's a little jittery, and that's where I think the smooth tool comes in, and you can use that to kind of clean that up a little bit. Now I wouldn't say over clean it because some of this is in the texture. But the stroke can actually just be an element of the shape, right? So we have this shape, and the shape can either have a fill or a stroke. But just by doing a little bit of this, I think we can start getting something that's maybe a little easier to clean up and easier to work with. Now that doesn't, that's just going to give you a little bit of a, it's going to give you fewer of these little hitches here, or this stuff here, or this little overlapping area here. And so it looks to me like what you've done is you've drawn the outline, and then you've went in with the blob brush and tried to paint within the outline, and you have a couple of things going on. Some of your outlines aren't completely connected, they're just little line segments. And this is kind of, I think, still thinking in the Photoshop sense of like how do you draw a solid shape with an outline. In Photoshop is you draw a line and you fill it in, right? Or you draw a shape out of a line and fill it in. And we don't really have to do that. I mean, you kind of have, I mean, like if you needed to make a star, then basically we can just make a star, edit this to get to the distortion that you want. Right, let's say it was something like, I mean, you'll be doing way more editing than this, right? And then from there we can add a stroke around that if we need to. Right? And so that's just a cleaner way of getting that star. And what you'll see is we get these really nice corners as opposed to some of this stuff that's going on here. So creating an enclosed shape and then using the stroke to give you your outline is a little bit of a cleaner way of working, and it gives you the option to also have sort of a different look to that stroke, that maybe you don't want it to be the same outline all the way around. You see how that looks a little bit different than this solid stroke all the way around it. So that would be probably my other comment, is I feel like some of these strokes are just the solid shape. Now you get some really neat examples of the stroke width up here, but that's kind of happening because I think you're accidentally painting over part of it instead of underneath it, and it gets a little messy in some of these areas. I think adding this green shape, these two green shapes really did help. I feel like he needs a touch more information in his upper chest area here, and maybe a touch less of these green shadows right in here. But otherwise, I think like you're getting the imagery. More than anything, it's just sort of a cleanup thing. So let's move along. Ryan. Sorry. Okay. So I like the style a lot on this. I like this like really hard color with these like this very simple way of defining these shapes. And so you get like these very blocky like defined shapes, but I mean it reads like I can read his jacket. I'm a little bit less of a fan of these like brush stroke fireworks. I think that there could probably be an interesting way you could show those fireworks that would like this feels a little quick to me in the background. And I think that there's a little bit of a depth issue with the bear. And it's probably because you're using a lot of the same colors in here. And there's nothing really to, like, some of this gets a little confused right through here about where the separation is, I think. So without the bear entirely, I mean, I think it actually, like if we were to just, I don't know how to hide that specifically just by itself. Well, let's just temporarily delete it. So like, without it, I think he's reading really well. I'm not necessarily sure the two color schemes here, like on one side or the other. To me, that implies that there are two sides to him, and this implication is that there's a dark side and a bright side. But considering he's kind of got this stern look, or not, this like serious look, with a something happy going on in the background, it makes me feel like that it's kind of the, you know, clowns are the saddest people you ever meet, and like saying it kind of feels like that you're saying he's a very festive guy on the outside, but really he's kind of in pain. And I don't know if that's what you're trying to get across or not, but that's what this is kind of selling to me. But then the two-tone jacket doesn't really do that as much. I think if that's what you're trying to sell, these are two different happy colors, or two different happy color schemes. So I think playing with the color a lot, I definitely think it's working better than your first pass. And it's actually not bad. I think you could probably do some work on the fireworks, and if we could pull back on the bear's like brightness a little bit, like if the bear was just maybe a single color, or like a single color scheme, so maybe just using the brown colors in the bear, and then that way some of this stuff in the background doesn't tangle up in his hair and draw our attention away from him. I think that if you played a little bit with that, then you could make this color scheme work. So it's not bad. I'm just saying I think that it's kind of melding together. There's a little too much going on, and our eye doesn't really know where to stay. And when I get to his face, like his face is the part that really just pulls me in. The rest of the stuff almost feels different, and I think it's because these are such bright clown colors, and then this is such an earthy color, such a much more natural color, and then the bear's got this natural color, but then everything else are these like bright circusy colors. And so I think that there's some color work, and I don't know if there's a sort of a textbook answer to give you and be like, oh, this is how you fix that. You adjust the hue and no, it's not that. I think it just needs some work with the colors depending on what it is you're wanting to convey with it. And I think that right now the bear and the thing behind him is drawing way too much significance. Now it's nice that we're in vector, because we could actually probably scale that bear down and push him back a little bit, maybe put something else over here to make him feel like he's in a different environment. And we can play with this and get it. I mean, it's not I feel like I'm rattling off a bunch of issues I see with it. It's actually not that bad. It's in a pretty good shape. It just needs like that last like 10% to figure out the sort of the way to balance it all out. And I think what you're getting in the forms are really nice. The only thing I would say on any of that is I feel like these lines feel a little too computer generated. They're too boxy. And so maybe consider playing around with some of the different line types. Looks like they're grouped together. So my guess is you were doing this in an older version, or you've changed that. But I mean, even doing something like that, that feels a little bit more reminiscent of what you got going on in some of the shapes on the face. I like these line strokes. I think those are kind of a neat idea of doing it that way. But then we got the ear here, which is again kind of boxy and stiff. And so just sort of playing a little bit with the strokes, I think could help give you some interesting variety in there, and it makes it feel just a little less computer generated. So let's move on. No, thank you, QuickTime. Okay, Teresa. I like seeing both of them in here so I can click back and forth and see the, well, that's not what I meant to do. Interesting. So let's look at this here. So first off, extremely creepy. Like it's a very dark, like these dark, like bloody reds. This just feels very dark and like something from a horror film. I think it's working better. I still feel like it feels like his hair is a ghost a little bit. But I'm alright with that. I'm not, I don't think that that's something I don't know, it's weird. It's because it's in the background and it's the same color, it just feels like it's invisible. And that usually doesn't happen with other things, so I don't necessarily know. I don't know if it's because it's the hair or if it's because the background is kind of desaturated where all of the other colors are much more saturated, and so that's pushing them forward in front of it. So it's kind of like we get this almost depth confusion because you have this blue in front of this red, and it doesn't necessarily feel like it is because of the sort of the color difference. If you were to put I'm not going to get on that line of reasoning, but having said that, I think it's part of what makes it somewhat uncomfortable intentionally. Like I think that you've made some interesting choices with that, and I don't necessarily know how to. I mean, if we go to select everything, let me unhide or unlock everything for you. If we select everything and then go and play with the colors, and play with these really dark blues, like if I started really pushing this back, different dark blue, started really pushing this back toward black, then now it starts popping forward and feeling like something else. Or if I went the other way, and I don't know if I did it all toward white, what that would do. That kind of feels like it's something in front of them, and it's because maybe it's actually because it's the same color range, or like the color saturation of these reds. So the other option is if we grabbed all of the reds and brought their saturation down, would it push it back? I'm not saying that these are things that are wrong with it. These are just my observations of why it's doing what it's doing. As for the things to work with, I don't know if I see a ton of shape issues. I think a lot of these jagged, sharp, cut you shapes, I think a lot of them are intentional. I feel like I lose a little bit of information like here. Like I'm not really, it's not that I'm losing information, it's that I'm not 100% sure what these shapes are defining in terms of anatomy, or like is this, I think this is his upper arm, but I don't know why that's, like that may just be a shadow falling on him, but some of that gets a little confusing to me, whereas all of this in the face for the most part is pretty clear. you have a couple of really bright, hot triangle highlights, or like these polygonal shapes. But they're not really throughout. They're just on a couple of specific areas. There's none on his arm or his lower body, just on his face and in his hair. And I think that because of that, that makes those areas look particularly shiny, whereas this doesn't, because to get that bright white of a highlight. So now, again, that's not necessarily bad. I guess it's figuring out what you want to do with that. Do you want to add a little bit more of that evidence of the white somewhere else to where you can kind of balance out that this cue that you're sending to the audience of this is a shiny object, or that this has a bright highlight on it? Do you want to tone down that highlight? Because I think it looks good in the hair, but maybe in the face it's a touch much. Like maybe this, you probably don't have the color to play with it too much, but if you pull down the transparency of this, or used one of these other colors, I don't know how many colors you got. It feels like you're using all of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah. Oh, but white isn't a color, so I guess that doesn't, that's why you're using that. Sorry, I'm thinking. Yeah, I think if you can tone those down a little bit and still find a way to do that without using the color, I think that it's going to seem less shiny, but I don't mind the shiny. It's just that it seems to be only his face that is shiny, and so that makes him look like his face is like wet or a little oily or something. Now, the things that I think are working well, I definitely think there's a lot going on in the face that's working well, and I think that this new addition you've added to the hair and this little line to connect it, I think that's working pretty well. I think you maybe could even take that up just a little bit right here, and that would help as well, because it feels like from some of these little bitty lines over here, like from that one, I'm not for sure if the hair ends here or if the hair's outline ends here. So just by, using this color, maybe we would use the blob brush kind of small, and just a little indicating line right there. Much smaller than that, of course, but just a little one might give us some more information about that edge. And actually just adding that also kind of plays a little bit with that depth issue I was having before. If you had a couple in here as well, I wonder if that, I don't know, that's starting to feel a little more feminine than maybe you're going for, to have too much shine in the hair. But I think that it's working pretty well. Those are just my observations on things. Again, the only area that's not really communicating very well to me is this shoulder, and that may be, I don't know. I don't necessarily know what's happening with the anatomy in here, so you may play around with that a little bit more. The rest of it, I think, is just going to be balancing with the color and, just playing with that a little bit. Let's move on. Travis. So, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Okay. So, sorry, I was kind of looking at some stuff. So I actually really like the sort of this watercolor look you got out of it. And some of that I think is from kind of intentionally making some sort of sloppy, sketchy lines. I think you could play around a little bit more with cleaning some of that up and making it a little less bubbly. And then conversely, you get this, this line here, which is this perfect square. And so like I think it's finding a good mix in between there to where you can't really see the computer and you can't see the over softened brush. But from far back, it actually looks really good quality-wise. So I guess it also kind of depends on what you're going to be using it for. But printed out as a poster, I have a feeling you're gonna see a little more of the brush in there than you're probably wanting. My only other thing that I'm seeing is I have a hard time, like I lose parts of his hand, like especially if I get far away. Like there's so many colors that are all in the same lightness and darkness in here. So you get like this purple is the same purple here, it's the same purple here, is the same purple here, and so all of this almost pushes back in depth, which is a shame considering how strong of a foreshortening we have here. So I think you need a little bit to play with some of that and separate his hand from his body. And so what some of that might mean is if you have let me grab a color here. That is definitely not what I meant to do. What am I doing? Let's just lock that so it's not an issue. Okay. So if you had just some very faint yellow lines just kind of breaking up some of this, just so we can, and maybe it doesn't have to be yellow, maybe it's just actually this lightest blue that kind of gives you an outline in here. I think that, and I wouldn't do it everywhere, but it's kind of like, where is that edge of his hand? And it's almost just like you're adding a rim light to parts of it. And so rim light being similar to what you have going on here around the finger, it's sort of the backlighting is casting a highlight. And I think just adding a little bit around through here will kind of break up some of these shapes and allow us to see more of the profile of his hand. And it doesn't all have to be in this yellow. That yellow is going to be the hottest one, but even like this color here that you have, or possibly like that one, just to sort of add a little indication of where his hand is, and then hopefully that's going to separate it a little bit more, and we can actually see just from those really faint indicators where his hand is, and it won't fall in and get as blurry or lost in his body. I think you could also possibly even considering a little bit like right in through here just to kind of break some of that up. So play with that just a little bit more, but that's my only real notes, that and sort of a little bit of cleanup to sort of hide the technique that you used. Like once we get in here really close, anybody who's used Illustrator before is going to notice this as sort of these telltale signs of your blob brush use. And so, or here we're going to see that as well, and that's going to it's just noticeably the blob brush. So I think hiding some of those like sharp rounded edges is an issue. I think if you're using the tablet to do this though, remember you can double click on here and you can set your size to pressure, and that will help you like some variation in the brush width as you're using your pen. So the last one. It is? Okay, let me make sure there's not one hiding. Okay, so I think that hopefully everybody got something from that. That should be enough feedback for you if we get a chance to do a revision for you to go back and do some touch up on this to make some slight adjustments to your grade. So let me know if you have any questions, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.